County. Today, our Board of Supervisors was considering the appeal of two applications, one from Marathon and one from Phillips 66 to process renewable fuel instead of crude oil. And there's a lot of conversation about the transition away from fossil fuels. They did get approved, if you're curious. Some may find that controversial, but the board moved a 5-0 vote. In each case, they were very clear that we need to start thinking about how we're going to transition, how we're going to move forward. And we're one of the first counties to approve these types of developments. And one of the things that came up in the conversation was that the refineries were cited in Contra Costa County before we had a general plan or zoning ordinances or land use designations. So they actually don't have operating permits. They're just there operating. And when they come in now to process renewable fuels, we actually, now they have conditions of operation and obligations and other things. So it was a very interesting conversation into that kind of policy stuff. So we're looking at how do we transition away from the petroleum industry, thinking about hazards associated with wildfires. And I know that's very real here. You're kind of close to that big, wildfire belt. But how do we think about how do we mitigate for that? How do we evacuate? What kind of coordination do we do? We're thinking a lot about hazardous materials. We do have a lot of hazardous materials in our county. In addition to the heavy industry, we have, freeways and lots of other things here. Oil and gas wells. I don't know that there's a lot of active drilling going on, but when we think about, what are we going to do about them and about the future of them? And then looking at low impact development. So can we use concrete that has a lower carbon footprint? Can we think about reclaimed water? What are we doing for renewable energy? And thank you very much, Adrian, for that plug about solar. That's tremendous. It's very exciting. So you can find all of these in the agenda from our last Sustainability Commission on page 34. It might be good that time. And then I'm sure you're going to want to know where are we with the climate action plan update. And I don't know how many of you know this, but this is a picture of the Antioch Dunes primrose. It is a protected species under federal law, and there is a little Antioch Dunes National Wildlife Reserve in Antioch, in between all these industrial facilities. You have to call the warden to get a tour, but it would be a great field trip for you guys. It's very cool, but you have to go in the spring. Is when this flower blooms. And then I think in the summer they have a special butterfly that you can go see there. Anyhow, that was a little side note, a little Contra Costa trivia. So the climate action plan update, we have developed draft goals and strategies for our climate action plan. You can see here where we're focused on the environment, solid waste, reducing water use, clean transportation, resilient communities and natural infrastructure, climate equity, leadership. We've heard really loud and clear from the community that folks want Contra Costa County to be a leader on climate and sustainability issues. And then thinking about how we're going to implement it. And the schedule for the climate action plan is very closely coordinated with the general plan. And so this is our next steps. We're going to be releasing the general plan and the climate action plan for review later this year. We're going to be going out on the road again to do more workshops, and I'd be happy to come back here and talk with you all about the climate action plan in particular, but also the general plan, if that would be of interest. I think they're both really big topics, so you might have to do two, but we definitely want to get community input on that. So that's what I have for you tonight, and happy to take any questions or just have a conversation. Got my pen, my notebook up here, I'm ready to take notes. So fire away.
Sure. Thanks so much for doing this and all your efforts throughout your lifetime of doing this. What do you perceive as our biggest stumbling blocks as a county?
I think, well, there's always the stumbling block of we'd like to have more money to do everything, right? There's so many priorities, but I've actually seen a lot of change in Contra Costa County since I started in this job 6 years ago. You know, when I was interviewing for the job, I said to the people who are now my bosses, I said, I know that there are people in Contra Costa County who care very deeply about these issues, but they haven't had a place to express themselves. And that has been very true. I think, once we appointed that now 17-member sustainability commission, 12 members, 5 alternates, we've got our board of supervisors as a standing committee on sustainability. So it's really great. So that has helped put a lot of pressure on the board and on staff to do more. I think the biggest stumbling block or the biggest challenge is just people don't like change, right? Like drawing on my school board experience, I developed a little quote that I have on the door of my office. Many people want things to be different and better, and yet they don't want anything to change, right? So, and we're all old enough to have had that experience. So I think that is probably the biggest stumbling block is just what are you afraid of? What's going to be so different, right? And then there are some practical realities of like, you can't always go immediately to where you know you want to be. You have to have some interim steps to get there, and that can be frustrating.
Like the biofuels.
Exactly. So let's go to your neighbor, and then we'll come to you. Green sweater.
Okay,
I think you have to be on the mic so the
Yeah.
Zoomers can hear you.
Right, the Zoomers can only hear you if you speak into the mic.
Hi, thank you so much for your time. I have a question about how the general plan is addressing the drought and water use, and what are the recommendations? Are you working closely with East Bay Mud? How are you going about implementing those recommendations?
The general plan is definitely looking at natural resources. I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head exactly what it is, but I think we do coordinate with the water agencies, but they're separate political entities. They each have their own elected boards. So we do definitely coordinate with them. We recently updated our sustainable groundwater management plan. This is something that we're required to do by state law. Looking at, do we have enough water? And the answer is yes. So, but we are definitely thinking about it. I think there are requirements in there for drought tolerant landscaping. We don't have the authority to tell people what to plant in their personal gardens, right? Like that's their own thing. But we are actually doing a study right now. We got a grant from the state, and we're doing a study of what is the potential to sequester carbon in the different land use types in Contra Costa County. Definitely the ag lands, but we're also looking at the parklands, the natural working lands, and urban and suburban situations. Like we do have some urban farms in Richmond and in Pittsburgh, but also gardens can be a really big piece of that, and trees. So I see this carbon sequestration study, which we call Healthy Lands, Healthy People, is kind of laying the groundwork for us to then develop a tree master. We're going to be doing some workshops for that carbon sequestration study, and I'll send the information that you need to send. Just share it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm wondering whether you have if you have any kind of association with or alliance with some of the environmental groups that are working in the area. For example, 350 Contra Costa.
I am in regular communication with people from 350, with Marty Roach and Gary Harper and some of the others, and I get all their emails, and so yeah, I definitely am in touch with them.
So is the council trying, is there some kind of coordination with the council itself with some of these groups, especially 350 Contra Costa?
Well,
Which is, by the way, I just moved here from the Bay, the East Bay, and I was very active in the 350 Bay.
Okay.
And they speak very highly of the 350 Contra Costa group and
Well,
very active in.
That's one of the groups that has really come into its own in the last few years.
Right.
So yeah, we do coordinate with them, and when we're ready to do more outreach around the climate action plan, they're one of the first groups I'm going to call. They don't get on the schedule yet, but yeah, they definitely participate in our processes.
Carol Wade and I were two of the founders of the 350 Contra Costa.
Okay,
I would like to, before we let Jody go here. I would like to know more about how can we help you?
Mhm.
What can we do? What can Sustainable Rossmoor do to help you and your colleagues at county level get these sustainable elements really embedded in the plan? And so that, so
Yeah.
that it doesn't get sort of left out.
I think the elements will be there. The question is gonna be, how do we implement, right? So what does our follow-up look like? Are we funded to do what we need to do? The Board of Supervisors, last November agreed to, I don't know, not all of you were here in 2020, but in 2020, the voters approved the Measure X sales tax. And there was a long process to develop recommendations for how to allocate those funds. And 350 was very active there, saying you should give a lot of money to your sustainability group. And the board agreed to give not as much as 350 wanted, but I recently brought my staff doubled from 2 to 4 in the last month, which is very exciting. And we're starting to feel our roots about what we can do with more staff. And so we're thinking a lot about sea level rise. We know that's a big priority under the Measure X work. We're thinking a lot about just transition, how we transition the economy to different things. We're thinking a lot about how do we make sure that everyone in Contra Costa has opportunity, right? Because our county has a large number of communities that we call impacted communities. The state calls them disadvantaged communities. And they're communities that are disproportionately burdened by being near pollution sources. And so we have a real focus in our work. We love you guys, and you have the resources to put solar in your roof, but not everyone does. So that's really where we're trying to put more of our attention. So I'm going to get back to you on that, but I think definitely is continuing to support. It's really nice for decision makers to hear folks say you're doing a good job. I appreciate you. That doesn't happen as often as they might. This is nice. So anyway, but I think we'll definitely keep working on this, and we're both.
Because John Joyle gave us a talk about months ago, and was very sort of he fired me up about the idea that we could actually somehow impact by writing letters, by showing up at meetings.
It's definitely I mean, I will tell you that in 2020, September 2020, you'll be next. Let's see. Hold on. In September 2020, the board adopted a planning emergency resolution, and the level of organization from 350 and the Climate Reality Project was amazing, right? Like, you have people everywhere, county calling in, and it was all on Zoom in September 2020, and every age group and demographic. It was wonderful. And it ended up being a 5-0 vote, even though there was someone who had a little bit of hesitation, because how can you say no when there's that much support for this thing? And I know I'm talking a lot, but I think you guys will find this interesting. One of the things in that kind of emergency resolution, we wanted it to be very action oriented, was you need to have your department heads start meeting on a regular basis to talk about what county government can do to implement your climate action. Because most county departments hadn't even thought about it. There was one department, quite a large department, was like, oh, I could get electric vehicles for my fleet. I can do that here. And we're like, yeah. So then she went off and told her staff, develop a climate action plan for our department. So just this week, last week, we launched a program where every department is nominating volunteers who are called our G3, our Green Government Group Champions. And every couple of months, they'll have a new assignment. They're gonna start out by focusing on Bike to Work Week, which is the week of May 16th. Encourage you to ride your bike and to go out on Friday, May 20th, for the Energizer stations, and you can get prizes, gifts. So we had 50 people show up to our kickoff event, which I thought was tremendous, right? Like huge level of support, and every library had, every branch of the library has out there. So librarian is very good fun.
Can I ask your, head of that department, who decided that you could get electric vehicles? Did she take over the post office?
That's a good one. And blue shirt. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've got the talking to.
Okay.
You mentioned that when you went out with the, the first roadshow for the Common Action Plan, you came to Rossmoor and Sustainable Rossmoor hosted the first one. I shouldn't speak for Adrian and the rest of the steering committee, but I bet we would love to be the first one to do the next iteration.
Okay, we're on. I'll let you know when. We're not quite there yet, but we're.
You stated at the beginning, the biggest obstacle is funding. And not all the funding is coming from the county.
Right.
And a lot of the funding that's currently available is unworkable. He has a program to subsidize batteries that I'm told by the installers is hopeless. Governor's adopted, I was on a Zoom call with the governor. I was astounded with trying to have something like $80 million surplus in the state. He has this program to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles, but there isn't much in the way of really implementing the charging stations. I'm sure it's part of the plan, but everything isn't going to come through the county. But I think any help we can get is that we're targeting those monies might come from. Obviously, if the Fed ever passes its program, there's all sorts of money. Rossmoor wants to do a water reclamation project that's going to cost $13 million. So that's obviously not going to be financed with membership fees. That's going to have to require grant. How do we find out, or how can we influence availability of funds? Because a lot of people are well intentioned, but without the money,
Great.
not
So-
much can happen.
There's lots of different funding sources out there. It's actually a little overwhelming to keep track of them all, but a lot of the funds are going to come from the state. So one idea might be to talk to your state senator and your state assembly member and say to them, we want to do this project at Sustainable Rossmoor. Who can you connect us with at the Department of Water Resources? Whoever's going to be funding that, and see if they can, can help you facilitate that. And then Congressman Saulnier has been a great advocate for Costa County. We're going to get some money sometime soon. He has arranged for a $750,000 grant to the county to do planning around economic transition. I had a meeting yesterday with the head of the Richmond Community Foundation, who has an amazing program to fund the rehabilitation of houses and other properties that have been abandoned. They did a first round by floating a social impact bond. The city of Richmond, a $3 million bond. Over 5 years, they rehabbed 27 homes that were, in foreclosure and had liens against them. They cleaned up the sites because they got money from EPA, the Brownfields program. They got money from the California Energy Commission, supplement this work, to make sure that they were energy efficient and had solar on them. They're working with MCE around microgrids. So a lot of it is building the partnerships, and now they'd like to take this program countywide. So they're starting to talk it out with folks, and I just shared with you what their plans are, their hopes are. It's a great program. I'll send Adrian a link to some more information about it. But those are the types of things where we just need to find who's doing the work, right? Because the county recently passed an all-electric ordinance for new construction, but the existing buildings are the ones that are going to be harder to convert, right? And if we can pitch up with that, boy, that would be great. So that's the kind of thing we need to hear about, and you just have to, you know, there should be a network of these. But I'm sure you're all on here tonight, you're all networkers.
Especially Carol. No, we're not.
I had the talking stick now. I just want to acknowledge, Jody, how gracious you are about having taken on the responsibility that was required and the climate emergency declaration of the county to coordinate all the different departments that hadn't been happening before. And so you're the one who got that in her lap and said, I'll run with it, and you have, and it's terrific. I also just wanted to give credit to a lot of community groups in addition to 350. You mentioned 350 a few times, and they are very active, maybe the most, but Sierra Club comes to most of the Sustainability Commission meetings, the Interfaith Council. So there's a lot of groups. Sustainable Walnut Creek has quite a number of people that overlap with the other groups. So there are two different questions for different people that I've been asked to ask you. One is, does the county currently have a sustainable landscaping person or department or niche where people can address or suggest or find out what the current status is for sustainable landscaping and what's going to happen with it? And it's the person who's asking us specifically wanted to know about the tree component of that.
But what is the tree component?
Yeah, seeing a lot of trees that seem to be inappropriate and inappropriately spaced and planted, not the best use of funds and not sustainable and so on. So who's directing that now, or how does one connect with that?
So that happens through, the landscaping on county facilities happens through our public works department, and I don't know who exactly has the lead on that, but I can find out on that and get back to you. I'm willing to guess that they will tell you that sometimes trees are planted without their knowledge. So it might be that trees, you know, were planted too close together. I mean, the big concern that we always hear from our public works department is, great, let's get some money for trees, but who's going to maintain them, right? So they know that that's a big concern, and you know, we're always thinking about, well, what's the life cycle impact, what's the life cycle cost for these projects. So I'll have to get back to you on who exactly it is, and I don't know if we have a specific policy, but Public Works is definitely aware with the drought that we have to do more drought tolerant landscaping. And then the trees, I mean, that's just always a focus. And in the general plan, we talk a lot about trees, particularly in our affected communities, and the need for more shade there because it's a health, as you know, as a doctor, it's a health.
The other question I was asked to ask you relates to the refineries and fossil fuel extraction. Some of the draft pages of the general plan refer to the intent to be thoughtful about how fossil fuel extraction is being done. But it doesn't specifically say that there's any plan to stop it or to phase it out or to end it. So that seems to be missing, and we're wondering, is that deliberate? Was there a conscious decision to decide not to promise that can't be kept?
I think that might be an area for advocacy.
Okay, thank you. Got the message. Not that we aren't. I mean, you mentioned that maybe there's not drilling, but of course you're more than aware of what's going on in Brentwood and Antioch. And there's new drilling.
Ordinances there, and yeah, we figure.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Well,
I'm going to take this opportunity to once again make an offer to you and remind you that one of the things that Rossmoor, that's unique about Rossmoor, and with the 10,000 retirees we have here, is the depth, the breadth of the experiences and skill sets here. I would challenge you to name me a skill set I can't find in Rossmoor. And so the reason I say that is that if you need a specific help or consulting on some particular item. And if you can't find readily, you may want to reach out to Adrian, Carol, et cetera. And if there's a decent chance we can find that person here.
Super, thank you.
So long as they're not a TikToker.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's great to see you all.
Okay. So, first of all, let me thank Jody so much, ever so much for her talk, her expertise, and all the work that she's been doing over these years to make our place we live so much better. But I'd like to, before we leave this topic, I'd like to sort of get a sense from the club. Is working on this general plan, is this something that we feel we can do? Is this something where we feel we can engage and that we should? Are people intrigued by this idea? Or is it like, well, yeah, okay, and we move on to something else? I'd just like to have some feedback from the club.
Maybe it could inform.
Hold it, excuse me, can we?
Maybe we could use it as a framework or a list of how we could go about things. And then use that to go to representatives and say, in the sustainable general plan is X, Y, and Z. We have something, for example, our water issue, where we don't have individual meters, much like LA in 1970s, right? And we need that if we're going to enforce what is surely coming as a water restriction plan. Also, the other one would be when Las Vegas has actually implemented a get rid of unnecessary grass areas, lawn areas. If we go about that, can we connect with the general plan, maybe get funding or find where we can, get something like that? And use that as our not touchdown, but rather our political base.
So you're thinking, members, some of us taking on that as a task that identify those kinds of situations?
We could explore it.
Yeah.
On the issue of water, are you guys served by East Bay Mud or by, okay,
East.
East Bay Mud has programs that help you tear out your lawn and your plant.
We're using that liberally here.
Yeah, so that's where I would start, would be, getting your members to connect with the East Bay Mud program. But there are other things you can do, and those are good ideas.
Are there other ideas, Marilyn?
Yes, I was just listening intently to what Jody was presenting to us, and certain things you mentioned really resonate in terms of the work that some of our committees are doing with Sustainable Rossmoor. Particularly when you mentioned the master tree plan. We have a tree planting and preservation committee that has been very active. So I could definitely see us wanting to interface with you and see how we could possibly support you and contribute to that effort.
I'm not there yet. Maybe not there too, but
Trees are having any.
That's right.
Okay. Does anybody else have any ideas? Things or anybody on Zoom? Mr. Zimmer?
No.
Brad? Oh,
I'll just mention that, if people do not know, I have to go is to the Contra Costa Sustainability Commission. Put that in Google and it'll bring up the page and the dates for the meetings and the link. So you can look, it's every other month. And the meetings are about 2.5 hours long on a Monday evening. And you can look at the agenda to see if there's something that interests you. And then on Zoom, so it's pretty easy to participate or with.
we'll try and send out an email about that so that everybody knows about that.
it still seems to me one of the best things that we can do is have one or more people from within Rossmoor besides Carol can actually be involved in coordinating with the other environmental groups, that are very active in the county. Like 350 Costa, Sunflower Alliance, etc. And there's a group called, Contra Climate Action Network, that needs to do that. And I think Carol attends those, right? But it would probably be beneficial to have someone else besides Carol attend those, because the more that information is disseminated within Rossmoor, the more the ideas and efforts that we have can be brought back and funneled into them. And so we shouldn't, I guess what I'm trying to say is we shouldn't leave that entire burden to Carol. To carry, we should be more actively pursuing, that inter-coordination and communication.
Yeah. Sounds like a good idea. I would like to challenge everybody who's here today and who's listening on Zoom, and we'll send out some sort of email blast. We need to get engaged with these kinds of things, because this is where we can make an impact. We can't change what's going to happen in Ghana or Ukraine, but we can make a difference in our own campaign. And we need to think about ways that we can really get involved and do those kinds of things. And so with that, I'd like to move on.
Back to the beginning.
I'll just forward out a few. Not too many, there you go.
Okay. So, Marilyn, would you like to talk a little bit about tree planting? This is something that we can affect. This is something we can actually do, and we are doing it. And a lot of people at Rossmoor are really intrigued by this because they love the trees that we have. And so it makes a real difference if we do something around tree planting. I get that.
Thanks everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here. I love talking about the work that our tree planting and preservation committee has been doing. We've been in form 2 years ago. When Sustainable Rossmoor surveyed their membership to identify what their priorities were in terms of sustainability, and tree planting and preservation was one of the top priorities. We have a great group, very active and committed group. And I just wanted to very briefly run through what we're currently addressing. Thank you, Mary. And Mary has been a member of our group. And Carol as well, Carol Weed, we're very happy to have as a member of our group. What we're currently involved in is launching phase 2 of our Rossmoor tree tours. And many of you that attended Sustainable Rossmoor's Earth Day picnic celebration, I think attended or participated in the tree tours that were conducted by Lima McCullough, who is doing just a wonderful job. She's so engaging and informed, and has done quite a bit of research. And so we're going to be continuing that effort in May and June, and then again in the fall. So there will be information published in the Rossmoor News, so please stay tuned, and we invite you to attend those. We're also we're currently involved, as you know, we embarked on an effort. We started it actually a year and a half ago with Rebecca Pollen to identify and label trees, beginning with Dollar Park, and some trees also around Gateway and around the golf courses. And we've identified and labeled approximately 30 trees on GRS property in that area. Now we're going to be expanding that effort. We're going to be expanding, it's okay, there's not too much of a close up here, please. We're going to be expanding that effort into our mutuals. And so we're beginning with mutual 1, 2, and 3. And we're inviting residents to let us know about particular trees that they think are significant and would like to have them labeled. We have a great member of our group, Jim Pearson, who has been just instrumental in this effort. And he is going to be assisting us with this effort, as well as Peggy Pearson. So we will be soliciting input and embarking on that effort very, very soon. We're also continuing with our Rossmoor News Featured Tree of the Month series. We've gotten really good feedback from Rossmoor residents about this, about these articles. And these are members of the Tree Planting and Preservation Committee who volunteer to actually research and write an article each month about a significant tree in Rossmoor. And we'll be continuing with that effort as well. But we're always looking for authors. So if anyone is interested in participating in that effort, please let us know as well. And a new effort that we're involved in, we're calling it Save Our Oaks. And what brought this about was concern about the health of our oak trees around Dollar Park. As many of you know, one of our beautiful legacy oak trees was diseased and died, and very recently needed to be cut down and removed. There's another very large oak tree that's also diseased in that area. And so a number of members of the TPPC have formed a working group to address the health of our oak trees in Rossmoor generally, but we're focusing specifically on the Dollar Park area. And we're starting by actually wanting to do an inventory and assessment of those oak trees in Dollar Park. And we're reaching out to a very renowned expert at UC Berkeley, who we're hoping will be able to assist us with that effort. So we will keep you informed as we progress with that. And let's see, we're also very actively looking for experts to speak about trees and global warming. And I know Adrian has reached out to me asking for speakers at future SMR meetings, sustainable Rossmoor meetings. And so I haven't forgotten about that, Adrian. And so we're looking to put a panel presentation together featuring different experts on trees and global warming. And lastly, but not least, we're also planning to work in consultation with MOD on tree preservation in Rossmoor. We're specifically concerned about the impact of the drought on our trees in Rossmoor, as well as what irrigation practices are currently being used by MOD and whether they're appropriate in certain circumstances for our trees. So we're very much looking to work in partnership with our new landscape manager in Rossmoor in that regard. So anyway, very active, working very hard. We have a terrific group of folks, and I would extend the invitation to anyone who's interested in working with us in terms of promoting the planting and preservation of trees. Thank you.
Microphone.
Carolyn, I don't know if this is a short answer or not, or maybe it's something that when your speaker is talking, I hear comments about whether it's better to preserve a tree or to plant a tree. And maybe kind of address that.
Oh, I'd be very happy to address that. Thank you, Mary. This is that's a topic near and dear to our heart. In fact, the reason the committee is called Tree Planting and Preservation is the critical importance of preserving the trees that we have. In terms of sequestering carbon, I mean, it's estimated it could take up to 20 years for a tree to reach maturity and be able to fully sequester carbon. And so when you think about the impact of removing a tree and the impact on our environment, there's no comparison. So we need to preserve the trees that we have. And when developers come in and say, well, they're going to cut down a tree, but they're going to plant, 3 new seedlings. Think about the number of years it will take for those 3 seedlings to reach maturity and be able to have the ability to, sequester carbon. So we have to plant the trees, absolutely. And the Tree Planting Preservation Committee, as you know, was actively involved in the acorn gathering and planting process that Adrian Ross was actually involved in, along with Rebecca Collins and the Trails Club. So we're very supportive of the need to plant trees, but it's critically important that we take care of and preserve the trees that we have. So thank you for asking that question.
That's why number 7 is super important. These are our trees. We own these trees. I mean, this is our God. And we should be saying how this should be done. But we have to advertise. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Here. This is something that I think maybe Rossmoor should be paying attention to over the next year, 2 or 3. EV charging. If you are lucky enough to have your own garage, then it's pretty straightforward to buy an EV and park it in your garage. But over half of the homes here at Rossmoor do not have their own garage. They have a shared car. They have a carport out there somewhere. And the carports do not have enough power to actually charge electric vehicles. They were wired back, in 1970. And we're thinking, back then it was like flying cars were going to be the next big thing, not electric. So I recently came across this thing called Cal EVP, which is the California Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Project. And it's very interesting because they've got $200 million of money from the state available to assist with putting in charging infrastructure. And they're particularly interested in multifamily housing, which is us. And so it's kind of intriguing, but it's really all about and they have a new they started about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago or something like that. They had sort of Cal EVP 1, and now they're moving to this Cal EVP 2, and with a new set of incentives and new opportunities. There's a workshop on May 12th at 10 a.m. And if we're going to get engaged with this and figure out ways to do it, we need to have people in the individual mutuals paying attention to this problem. It's all very well. Barry and I are both very interested in this. Barry's taking the lead on trying to find some ways to do this. But we need people in the mutuals, like in mutual 1 or mutual 2, some of mutual 3, mutual 4, mutual 8, all have this issue. And we need to have those people involved paying attention to this and realizing that there's opportunities here, because it's got to be solved at a mutual level. Jody, yeah. Mhm.
So in the past, when maybe the program has changed, this program was done on kind of a regional basis, and there's a lot of partnering with the community choice energy providers like MCE. And we actually put in an application a few years ago, the Contra Costa Transportation Authority and MCE and the other jurisdictions, and we were not successful. But we do have in Contra Costa County, I meant to say this earlier, someone asked about electric cars. CCTA in 2019 developed an electric vehicle readiness blueprint that you can find online, and they're very much partnered up with MCE on getting more chargers out there. I think you should go to this workshop because I don't think the California Energy Commission hears very often from homeowner groups like yours. And I think that would, and you guys are an interesting blend. You're everything. But I think it would be great for you to go and talk about these issues and see what you can find and let me know. I'm really curious.
Okay, great. And thank you for the ideas about CCTA. It's all I'm saying is that we need to get engaged with this problem, and we need to get people who are in various mutual where the problem really exists to get engaged. Barry and I are both fortunate in the fact that we have our own garages, and so you know, and we're both in the process of putting in capability of charging an EV, but you know, it doesn't translate to what people in mutual 1 or mutual 2 have to do, and so we need to have that kind of engagement. So if you are hearing my words and you are in those mutuals, please reach out. Let's try and figure out ways we can get engaged. If you know people that are in those mutuals who are interested in this problem, let's try and get engaged with that. I think this is something that we can do over the next year or 2 that will make a big difference. We can really truly figure out a way to enable electric vehicles here at Rossmoor. That, let me turn it over to Carolyn, who's going to talk about someone else. She's got it involved.
I'll just say that to segue or to add on to what Adrian said, there are already potential buyers coming to Rossmoor and leaving when they find out that they can't charge their EV here. So, you know, when you have half of Rossmoor doesn't have the capability and doesn't have the capability anytime soon to do it. And it's not an easy problem to solve. I'm not implying that it is, but anyway. So, yeah, we can't wait until 2035 just because that's the magical date. Everybody has to, you know, can no longer buy the other cars. So it's impacting us already. Yes, just wanted to mention that our trash talk meeting will continue to be on the 3rd Wednesday of every month at 10 a.m. in multi-purpose room 3. So we have resumed meeting in person, and it's much more pleasant. And it's not a combination like you're doing for us, Barry, with Zoom and room. It's just in the room. And we'll be focused. We started last time having a group from Mutual 2 speak about the organization that they've evolved, and we're going to be continuing looking at some of the extra benefits that some entries and some mutuals have taken by having group processes and intervention to improve recycling in their locales, and as well reaching out to groups. So whether a couple of the groups in Rossmoor clubs like the Rotary Club and the Activities Council have asked us to speak, and we have done that in the past. But there are a whole lot of other clubs that we could reach out to, and whether it's a 10-minute talk or a 30-minute talk, that's the kind of thing that we'll be doing more. A lot of entries and mutuals have their annual meeting coming up, often in the spring and summer, and there's summer barbecues and other gatherings that they have, so that those are good places to begin to use a portion of the time to talk about some of the changes in recycling or ways to save money by doing a better job of recycling. So that's all I have to say on that topic, and then we'll move on to films. Do I push something?
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, here it is.
Oops.
I'm not gonna try this. I'll do it. Okay. Yes, there are two films. As some of you may have noticed, we had for several years been having our second Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. and Peacock Hall film. It's our regular sustainable Rossmoor live film in the theater. But during COVID, about not quite a year ago, but almost a year ago, we added in on the third Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock a discussion on Zoom of a film that people could watch at liberty at home. So you'll be seeing this in the Rossmoor News tomorrow, and the following Wednesday have the links there. But the first one is a week from tomorrow, on May 11th, and it's the film called Meet Me Halfway, with meat spelled with M-E-A-T. And one of the people who was advertising it says that it's rated H for humor. So it does have some laughable moments in it. And then there's a discussion after that for those that want to stay, but it's a film that's about an hour and a half long. It's a new film, just came out a few months ago. And now, skipping ahead till the 18th, where we can watch anytime The Game Changers on YouTube. You can also watch it on Netflix, so in either source. And I'm curious because I know several people in Sustainable Rossmoor were waiting for that film to be finally released and come to the theater. And it did before COVID, so that was like 2.5 years ago. And we don't have a way to see a number of hands on Zoom, do we? No, it's too complicated. But anyway, I'll say, raise your hand if you've already seen The Game Changers. Some people in the room have. Okay, so I'll say there's a lot of you. I can't really see you, but I'll say there's a lot of you. But if you haven't seen it in a while, it's a very glitzy film. It's done by the producer of Avatar and
James Cameron.
Yes,
James Cameron.
What's the Titanic? What's that boat saying? Yes, the Titanic. So, he knows how to produce impressive, feature films that have all the right speakers and right things to say and the right color balance and so forth. So it's a very well done, well produced film, and a lot of the focus is on people on plant protein versus animal protein and what it's doing to people mostly, and also some of the effects that it has on animals and our ecosystems, and also the earth as a whole. So that you watch in advance. If you haven't seen it or you want to see it again, you watch it on YouTube or Netflix, and then you'll be able to get the link from the newspaper or a MailChimp that we'll send out to be able to register for the online Zoom discussion. It's about an hour. There's a guest speaker that's been arranged, a physician from England who lives in the United States, and this is one of his areas of expertise. So including the research that's involved with the issues around animal protein and plant protein and so forth. So, any questions? Ben?
Thank you very much, Carol. We're very lucky to have Carol find all these films for us. how many she watches.
We
in order
have a
to
team
find
of
these.
people. We've got six people on the committee.
It's really impressive. And finally, I'd like to talk a little, just to let everybody know about next meeting. And we'll be here in person. The social hour at 6:30, meeting starting about 7. If the social hour is getting really good, the meeting might not start until 6:50. We're going to have Jackie Mann come out and talk to us. And this really segues from what Jody was talking about. There are 4 refineries here in Contra, Costa, and Savannah. Yes. So two of the 4 have now been allowed to approved to process so-called renewable fuel. And so she's been studying this question for a long time and has a definite idea about what could go wrong with this. Are we really talking about it's truly renewable, or are we just kidding ourselves? And I think it'll be very interesting to hear the facts that she can bring to the table, her opinions that she's developed over a long period of time. And again, is this something that we can engage in? Is it something where we should be contributing today? I think that's an important aspect of when we bring a speaker in. It should be something that we can then turn into action locally and make a difference. So with that, I think we're done for this evening. Barry has a hand up.
Yeah, at a number of meetings, we ask, we go around and we invite people to share what things that they might have done or learned about that help improve sustainability. And I just wanted to share one. We didn't have that today. But one of the green sofa cinemas, I think it was, we talked about bad banks in terms of the banks that are financing fossil fuels and what you can do about it. And just recently, I attended that, and then I went on the website Greener America and found the community bank of the Bay here, which I've now switched over to. I did that over the past couple of days. They pledged that what they finance are green projects, renewable projects in the Bay Area. That's what they do with your deposits. And at first I checked to make sure, well, everything that I need a bank for, like ATM access and a notary to sign things and all the various accounts, and they have all of that. And you know, I can go to ATMs at CVS and at Safeway. There are actually ATMs there, and they'll reimburse you for the fees that are charged. So really, there was no issue of convenience. Well, slight one. The bank is in Danville, but the time to actually go to the bank is maybe once or twice a year to get something notarized. Anyway, so now the funds that had been financing some non-renewable projects are now financing renewable projects. So I just wanted to share that with you.
What was the name of the bank again?
Community Bank of the Bay.
In case people didn't know, Barry had alluded to the bad banks. For several years now in the United States, the top leaders of the bad banks has been JP Morgan Chase. It's always up there at the top, investing in all sorts of fossil fuel, pipelines and Arctic drilling and all those great things. But Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and Citibank are the other 3. So if any of you have funds or a Visa card or something on one of those banks, look into other alternatives. One source to go to as a guide to how where to start or have mutual funds you want to find some other alternatives. Fossilfreecalifornia.org. So fossilfreecalifornia.org has something about moving your money, and it has all sorts of lists and other resources and other links to other things. So you can go down a rabbit hole of investigating it, but if you have particularly pay attention to those 4 banks if you're connected with them.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I've been working with divestment quite a bit and trying to encourage people to switch from their banks to credit unions. And there, I switched several years ago to the telco, which by the way is very easily accessible in Walnut Creek. It's just outside New Haven. What's the name of that neighborhood? Up the street.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's in Eglinton, right, and it's right there in the corner of Broadway. And they're so great, and most credit unions do not invest in fossil fuels. You can check that out. But the telco does not. Very good. I just enjoyed it a lot, and I want to say that the transition was so simple. I don't know a lot of money, but less money than the simple. But anyway, it's very easy.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, with that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight, particularly, with us, please. Look forward to seeing everybody. Much.